Assalamu alaikum Khawateen o Hazrat. Welcome to In the Net. मैं हूँ आपका host Tahal Ali, and I'm joined here in the studio for the last time by the CEO and publisher of the Karachiite.com, Miss Nahal. Assalamu alaikum Nahal.
Walaikum salam Taha. How are you today?
Perfectly well, thank you. Nahal, here we are, finals day. Can you believe how quickly it's come?
I really can't, Taha. I mean, I was so excited, before the World Cup was starting, and now I can't believe it's the last day. It's a really disappointing day.
Yeah, and what a match we have to look forward to. Of course, we will see Argentina face off against Germany. But before we get to that, I think it would be a travesty if we didn't at least talk somewhat a little bit about the hosts, Brazil, and particularly their performance against the Netherlands last night. What did you think?
Very disappointing performance from Brazil. Honestly, I was expecting a little bit more of a change from their previous match, but I didn't really see much of a difference. And it's unfortunate to see that they didn't really perform at the standards that was expected of Brazil, being the host nation as well.
And how important was it for Brazil to win that match? I mean, $11 billion invested in the country. We already know the president, Dilma Rousseff, is hugely unpopular. There have been many allegations of mismanagement, downright negligence. She's very unpopular right now. And of course, we had discussed in earlier segments about how she'll be replaced by Giselle Bundchen for the presentation ceremony. But how important do you think it was for Brazil as a nation to win yesterday's match, to at least walk out with their heads held high?
Well, Taha, as we discussed in last night's segment as well, I think it was absolutely essential for Brazil to win yesterday's match, at least come in third place, if not in the final. And the fact that they just completely bombed yesterday is really disappointing and sad to see. And there was no sense of remorse, and it really didn't even feel like they actually wanted to win in yesterday's game, in my opinion. They didn't have the heart in it.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, of course, you bring up yesterday's segment, and it's ironic because you and I had actually discussed it in quite a bit of detail. One was the return of Thiago Silva, who, of course, is the captain for the Brazilian side, and he missed the previous match, the hammering against Germany, because of a suspension. And then the other was Arjen Robben, and we discussed about how Arjen Robben is a real threat, a real force to be reckoned with, and about how the Brazilian defense are going to have to stay on their toes. And then, lo and behold, first 5 minutes of the game, Captain Thiago Silva goes and gives the penalty away to Van Persie by tripping Robben. What was a horrendous foul. I mean, what can you say about that?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's just the beginning of the holes in the Brazilian defense. But I think we should take a look at the highlights. And
before we continue our criticism.
Yeah.
Hi, viewers, let's take a quick view of the highlights. We'll be right back.
Cesar. 1-0 Netherlands, and this World Cup gets kept worse and worse by the minute for Brazil. His weak header opened the way for Daley Blind to smash in his first ever international goal. Yamat, it might be number 3, it is, and that just about rounds off the World Cup finals so far as Brazil are concerned. The goal scorer is Gini Ronaldo.
Now, one thing I thought that was very interesting in those highlights was you actually hear the commentary, and you hear the commentator say, can things get worse for Brazil after Van Persie's goal? And it's ironic because things did then proceed to get worse for Brazil, didn't they?
They really did. I think at the beginning, once you had that first goal, and especially at, in such a stage, it really dampens your spirits. And I think the massive loss that Brazil experienced last time, it was just another nail in the coffin for them, I think, and that was just the starting point. But I think even as we discussed last time with David Luiz, I mean, even this time around, where was he in the defense? He completely missed out his defensive opportunities, and and I was saying this yesterday to somebody that as defense you have one job, and that's to get back in line. And if you don't do that, then you failed. And he really did, in my opinion.
And what did you think of Julio Cesar's performance as goalie? Because obviously, goalkeepers is something we're going to talk quite a bit about, particularly with regards to tonight's upcoming match for Argentina versus Germany. But what did you think of his attempts as goalkeeper? Do you think he lived up to the mark? Yeah, do you think even as the Brazilian goalkeeper, he could not deliver?
I think in this match he was probably a little bit better than he was in last time's match. But still, again, he's still a favorite for the Brazilian side. And in my opinion, he also just wasn't. He was better, but that doesn't mean much.
And now, let's flip that around and talk about the Netherlands' performance, because obviously their performance was, for an outgoing match, simply outstanding. You know, they walked out with their heads held high, and you know, when you think about it, Robin van Persie did what he wanted to do, which is actually score in the later rounds of the World Cup. His performance has been sensational in this World Cup. Arjen Robben's performance has been sensational. Wesley Sneijder's performance has been sensational. You know, you really have a lot of talent within the Dutch squad.
Yeah.
And from what we saw from the Brazilian side, the second Neymar was out, it was kind of like, okay, well, let's get ready for not just some defeats, but some annihilations, you know? And what can you say about that? What can you say about the Dutch side's performance?
Again, you know, as you said, the Dutch side really do have tremendous talent on their side that's beneficial for them, and that's really what has them going. And yeah, I think, you know, it's also a little bit unfair to say that the minute Neymar was out, that the Brazilians sort of lost their charm.
Well, it certainly appeared that way, though.
Well, of course it did, but you also have to consider which stage they were at that point, you know. Up till that point, they weren't really playing as challenging teams as the
world-class teams.
Right, or Germany for that matter. So I think that also plays into it quite a bit. And it's really unfortunate. But I think the Dutch played phenomenal football. They stuck to their reputation, although I do have my own personal criticisms for Robin, Arjen Robben. But
is this with regards to the diving?
Yeah.
Just the straight-out diving?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
it's horrendous. It's horrendous.
It is, and you know, it's not what football is about. It's unfortunate, and I hope he sorts that out.
Now, what do we have to say about the managers? Because obviously Louis van Gaal's last game as manager for the Netherlands, he has performed admirably. He has lived up to his reputation, and he is, of course, now, this was his last game with the Netherlands before he heads out to Premier League giants Manchester United. What can you say about the management for Brazil? Because obviously we know that Luis Felipe Scolari has been summoned by the Brazilian FA. If I'm being honest, I think I only see that going one way, you know?
Well, you know, Scolari, as you said, is incredibly well experienced, and it's just unfortunate because there does have to be a fall guy, and that is the managers. He's never really been able to perform. I mean, we saw it with his managerial skills with Portugal as well, which is why he was let go. And
also we've seen this in football before. I mean, we saw it with Fabio Capello in England.
Right.
Then we saw it with Fabio Capello in Russia. I mean, there's a lot of yeah, you know, a lot of the times, and this is something we've talked about on the show repeatedly, when your reputation precedes you.
Right.
And you know, clearly this seems to be yet another example of that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's unfortunate, but I think Van Gaal has proved himself, and I think Manchester United fans are going to be quite excited to have him on board next season.
Good. Well, we all look forward to it, and you know, it's not long to go now before that Premier League kickoff. Now let's get to the meat of tonight's show. The meat and potatoes, as we call it. Germany take on Argentina in the final of the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil. What do we know going into this match? What can we look